I'm so excited for today, and I'm so excited to have you guys here with me today on Speakeasy. David, Margaret, thank you so much for joining me. I mean, I'm looking at the background in your home right now, and I'm just jealous. I want to be sitting there with you guys having this conversation. But we're going to do this way because that's just what we do these days.
Thanks for having us, Kendra. We're really excited to be here. And
I,
it's not our home. It's we're in Northern Ontario right now, just taking a few days to get away. So
so I'm interrupting you on your vacation, even.
no,
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 no.
not a working vacation for sure.
Okay, okay.
Yeah,
Northern Ontario, whereabouts?
we're just outside of Parry Sound,
Oh,
the
lovely,
Magnetawan area.
lovely.
Yeah.
So we started this off today, and I was already jealous because I saw this nice, beautiful fireplace behind them, and I was just kind of sitting here in my room in Toronto, thinking that I'm in the wrong spot right now. So I'm motivated now. So
Okay.
I'm excited. I'm so excited for everything about this conversation, for everything we're going to do moving forward, for announcements, for just everything about this. So first off, David and Margaret, you guys started a company, ClearSips. And I want you guys to explain ClearSips first, because clearly nobody can do it better than those who conceived of it and conceptualized it and brought it to reality. So, what is ClearSips? Who are you guys?
Well, we're a family business, so I having had a wine agency for a couple of decades, um, have been sourcing wines for a long time, products for a long time, and you know, we Margaret and I both quit alcohol about almost 9 years ago.
Amazing.
So, yeah. So, back then there really weren't very many options, for us.
Yeah.
We would, drink. I don't even think bubbly was around then, but Lacroix certainly was.
a
Lots of
few
Perrier.
a few
Lots
point
of,
five options, a few of
yeah,
those.
exactly. And they weren't very good.
I
And
I'm not going to disagree with you by any means.
yeah, so we had kind of, over the last 7, 8 years or so, kind of given up on the whole thought that there would be, any other options. And really, Margaret is a coach. She helps women, um, uh, kind of navigate life without alcohol.
Okay.
And one of her clients actually said about a year ago, there's a lot more options out there, and she happened to be somebody who is a good researcher and said,
Mhm.
there's a lot of things happening out there. So that kind of piqued our interest, and so I started looking. And indeed, if you go to Europe or you go to other areas of the world, they're much further ahead than we are
Mhm.
with their non-alcoholic choices.
Mhm.
So essentially, I just began a search and became very, very excited about finding new options for people who had chosen to remove alcohol. And I was really pleased with what I found. And I used my wine model, you know, um, calling on restaurants. The whole kind of as many channels of sales. There's a grocery channel, there's a direct to consumer channel. There's restaurant channel. I really saw there was a good opportunity to get some high quality products into people's hands, into restaurants' hands, with the whole idea of giving people options that they
Mhm.
didn't necessarily have before. And so that's kind of the origins of Clear Sips. And as it turned out, all four of us had kind of unique skills that we could contribute to the company. So I was more of the sourcing
Yep.
products and logistics and getting stuff here. Margaret, copyrights for the website. She's got a blog. Mary is the marketer. She's the marketing genius behind
Mhm.
ClearSips, and Emily does all of our social media. So, when you combine all these things, I mean, I wish, when I started my business 20 years ago, I had these options. It was
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
me. It was just
Yeah.
me back then. But what a difference when you can bring all the strengths, to
Oh,
the.
absolutely. Were you still doing the wine? Like, was your wine company still in existence at this time? So you start
It
kind of,
still is.
it
It
still
actually
is
still
today.
is now. Yeah, yeah, and and I just want to say, because I do get the question. So you're in this non-alcoholic,
I love
you
it.
know,
Yeah.
are you just trying to take advantage of something here? And
Yeah.
and
Like
I
you
think
want both worlds. You want the best of
yeah,
both
and I can
worlds.
yeah, I can see that. I guess the way I feel about it is that I am sober.
Yeah.
So, there's a genuineness there,
Yeah.
that probably wouldn't be there if I were still drinking.
Well,
So I don't feel like I'm a fraud. I can still taste wines. I still taste hundreds of wines on the
yeah.
alcohol side a
Yeah.
year. As any professional taster, you're always spitting anyway.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
that doesn't come up, for me on the alcohol side, where it would interfere with that side of the business. But
Yeah.
it certainly is great on the non-alcoholic side of the business.
It's so unique, and I hadn't even thought about it until I'm just thinking now. Having that conversation it's got to be such a change too. I mean, being somebody who's trained in tasting wine, and I mean, for those of us who are completely ignorant to this, I mean, it's all just theatrics, right? Like, really, why do you have your nose in the glass? Why are we spitting? Like, just
Yeah.
just drink the wine.
Right.
But to then be able to apply that to a completely different industry. I mean, were you faced with backlash, pushback from the people that you'd been working with for decades, and all of a sudden now you're over there being like, "P.S. Do you guys have the non-alcoholic version?" Because I know how people look at me when I walk into a bakery and I'm like, "Do you have gluten free?" And they're like, "Why? Why would we have gluten free? Why would you take the gluten out of this? Because why bother?"
Right. Right. Well, I don't think I did have that fear a year ago when we started the
Yeah,
business, which is why on our site we say 3 out of 4 of us are sober.
yeah,
So I left it. We kind of left it open on purpose, just to be a little
yeah.
ambiguous.
Just
So
like the
we
guessing
didn't.
game.
Yeah, we didn't disclose who. So if somebody read that on the wine side and said, "Well, it's obviously him because he's got a wine agency," I
Yeah,
was okay with
yeah,
that.
yeah, yeah. And meanwhile,
Secrets out of the bag, though.
Secrets out of the bag
yeah.
now, for
Meanwhile,
sure.
we're all over here playing the non-alcoholic drinking games, trying to figure out who at Clear Sips is the one who's not, right?
Well, exactly. Um, I'll tell you where it was difficult in that first year of sobriety, or first 2 or 3 years of sobriety, was when I was with my suppliers.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
some of my
That
suppliers,
industry.
yeah, that was tough, because that's what they do. That's their whole reason.
Absolutely.
You're right. So if so I did. There was a lot of stealth drinking on my part, where I pretend and all this kind of stuff, and it's so ridiculous because it really has no bearing on choosing a wine,
Yeah,
for somebody, whether you actually swallow it or not.
yeah,
It's just all about concepts and
yeah.
you know.
Yeah, like I've certainly never picked up a wine bottle. Now, granted, it's been 22 years since I picked up a wine bottle that did have
Wow,
alcohol in
congrats.
it. But I mean, I don't ever see anybody reading the label looking for the hangover rating or they're
Right.
not interested in what happened if you actually swallowed it. They just want to know what it tastes good with. And it's
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
so
it's all on that front end. It's all on
right.
the. Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah,
That's it. That's awesome. And
yeah.
so, I mean, you're alluding to having chosen sobriety, and in choosing sobriety, simply a lifestyle change, something that just was too much a part of your life, or it just kind of naturally where life went.
Yeah, I mean, I think my own story isn't, I don't think, a lot, all that different from many. It's not overly dramatic.
Yeah.
I think that high school, university, over drinking for sure. When we first got married, our drinking actually went down when we were first married
Yeah.
for the first 3 or 4 years, and
Yeah.
then I started the wine business. Did a lot of traveling, searching for wines. So it became more a bigger part of my life, professionally and personally. So most people go to work and then they come home and there's a separation there. But for me, there wasn't. So there's always open samples.
Yeah.
I'm tasting stuff all the time, and I don't want things to go to waste. So So the drinking naturally increased for
Yeah,
sure.
yeah,
And, to the point where, in my early agency days, it was always more about the wine than the alcohol, but I would say over a 10-year period, that kind of switched,
mhm,
and that could be conducive with all everything else that goes, and you're raising a family and your stress levels go up, maybe you're making a little bit more money, so I think there's a definite link to drinking with affluence, like if
yeah,
you with disposable income,
yeah,
and so all of these factors I think contributed. But towards my late 40s, it really became more about the alcohol than the wine, and I started to have these internal conversations with myself about alcohol as though it were another partner, like
yeah,
another a person in a relationship.
yeah,
And that was troubling to me, that I was even having these conversations. And then
absolutely.
Margaret quit in in March timeframe, something like that. And 3 weeks after Margaret quit, I'm sitting up, in our room, and it's a Sunday night, and I'm having those conversations and saying, I'm not drinking tonight. I'm just not going to do it.
Mhm.
20 minutes later, the Napa Valley cab is open.
Yeah,
And, 45 minutes later after that, the bottle is empty,
yeah,
and I woke up the next morning. I said, that's it. I'm not having this conversation anymore. So
okay.
that's kind of in a nutshell what happened with me. But
And so, Margaret, I mean, that is so clearly you have your own journey, entirely separate from this place where sorry, you weren't working in the wine
I was
company.
not, no.
Okay. So here you are, you have your own relationship with alcohol, you have your own journey, and you're living next to somebody who that is their, day, evening, night, by business, by choice, by whatever. And so for you, I mean, where did the motivation come for you and your kind of place in Clear Sips? I know that you guys are co-founders of this in terms of, it's creation, and what was your journey to get here?
Oh, I'm not dissimilar than David's
Yeah.
because, we do live in the same house and I had the same access. and,
Yeah.
and let's face it, we met in a bar in university. Like we were drinking buddies for sure. I mean, we
Okay.
like to have a good time.
Yeah.
When we met, it was one of the things that I think we were drawn to each other because of it. I mean, that was our friendship group. We
Yeah.
were partiers. We would like to have a good time. And, we, as David said, we dialed that back well into our later in our 20s and when we had children.
Yeah.
And then I think as we started to approach our 40s, it was just more integrated outside of going out with friends. I still remember when David bought the first case of red wine.
Okay.
And, we weren't those kind of purchasers. We were buy a bottle of wine on Friday night.
Yeah.
It might last till Saturday night.
Yeah.
And the liquor stores in Ontario were closed on Sundays
Yeah.
in the
Yeah.
90s. So that
Yeah.
was that. But then the access, and I'm not going to blame the access because I'm sure that, given the nature of how alcohol works, it is
Mhm.
progressive.
Mhm.
And I'm going to say, I definitely progressed in tolerance, had a limit, but my limit changed
Yeah.
over a 15-year span. And for me, I was had my own career, and it was high pressure. And if I came home after work and on the counter was half a bottle of white, something that David had tasted somewhere in a restaurant that day,
Yeah.
and there'd be samples all over the place. And that
Yeah.
was just have a glass of wine to unwind, start cooking dinner. And that was my number one fastest, most efficient way to relax.
Yeah.
And then I started to feel that it was the only way I knew how to relax. That I always worked out, I always hiked, I always went to spin classes and things like that. But I worked that around. Nothing interfered with the 5 to 8 p.m. slot. I
Yeah.
wasn't out
Yeah.
working out then or at a bookstore.
Yeah.
I was entrenched in our habit. And for me, I was approaching 50 at this point, and I didn't feel well. Like it was starting to interfere with my sleep. I could
Mhm.
fall asleep, but not stay asleep. I've always been leaned on the side of being anxious, and it really, really was gasoline to my anxiety.
Absolutely.
And that waking up in the morning slightly hungover and then having 3 cups of black coffee wasn't exactly a recipe for wellness.
No,
So
no,
my
I feel like you and I would have been great friends.
yeah, yeah. So, so my internal voice was a decade long, I would say. I went long stretches, like one as long as 10 months,
Yeah,
before I finally quit, thinking this is it, I'm not going to drink again. But I was at war with myself, and it wasn't as tidy as David's. And I wanted David. I tried to bring him into my war, like by attacking his drinking a little bit.
yeah,
Like, you
yeah,
really need to quit. It was not about me, and
yeah,
it took a real sort of change of perspective to take the focus off of him and put it on myself and say, how are you feeling? How is this working for you?
yeah,
And I think really for me, the big turning point was getting so tired of disappointing myself with promises made to myself, and being able to keep those promises, like, being honest and having integrity is a huge value of mine.
yeah,
And when you turn on yourself and you can't trust yourself, that's what I started to realize. And I thought, you can't even trust your own bullshit.
yeah.
So,
Exactly,
um, so
exactly.
that was I brought a kinder voice to it over time. But at the beginning, I was just mad at myself.
Yeah.
So I made it, I kind of made it, it was a big crash moment, not in that it was a low bottom, but it was just sort of like something clicked.
Mhm.
Something clicked, and there was no turning back once I made that decision. I sort of was entrenched, and it was black and white for me. And it hadn't been for 10 years.
So, in just hearing David share that story, his side of it, and kind of watching this, so it sounds like you finally hit that switch. You finally hit that limit. Now you're sitting there. You have that conviction in your decision, and you're sitting in bed next to somebody who is potentially leaving the room to go hang out by himself, so that he's not doing this in front of you, I would imagine. Um, how much of that played out between you guys? How much of it was you at that point? Did you still kind of pull him into your narrative? Were you still
No.
No,
encouraging that? Or was it just, you know what? I'm good now. I'm done. You do you.
it was exactly that. And I don't know where it came from, but I kind of felt like I was fighting for my own life, and it
Yeah.
had nothing to do with him.
Yeah.
And I do remember he only continued drinking for 3 weeks after.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I was like sort of shocked. I thought,
I'm pretty sure that if Margaret had continued,
Yeah.
criticizing me, I would have drank longer.
I think
For
that's
sure, I
fair.
would have.
I think
Yeah,
yeah,
that's fair, because I think when somebody's pointing out something that you're having such an internal conversation about already, it almost becomes so complex that you can't stop. Like, there's that piece of it where it's like, well, now I can't stop because then it's not my choice, and it can't be about
right,
this. And it's also that, like, defiance of,
right,
yeah,
no,
yeah.
you can't tell me what to do.
Well, that becomes the focus, right? The
Yeah.
focus becomes you can't tell me what to do, and you totally lose the focus on your own internal, your own problem. And
a-
as we all know, it's self-diagnosed. So if you're not coming up with it, on your own, you're
Absolutely.
likely not going to succeed, in your journey if you're doing it for somebody else. So
Eh,
I think we were fortunate, that we both quit.
yeah.
And
Yeah.
we observe in couples sometimes where somebody has stopped and the other person hasn't, and invariably, it could be with good intentions at the beginning, but invariably you kind of observe that there's this friction,
Yeah.
because for the first time you see your partner, you're
Yeah.
not both under the influence, and you start to see things maybe you didn't see before. And
Yeah.
it must be very difficult in situations where both people don't quit.
Yeah, I mean, I think that certainly becomes a complexity for so many reasons. I mean, there's the judgment, there's the unintentional judgment, and the subconscious judgment of, I know what it took me to get here. Why don't they care enough about themselves to do the same? There's also the how it affects you, and then it's that, I hate the word resentment, but it does give kind of fuel to that. I don't think you can avoid it. I don't think it's a conscious or malicious act on anybody's behalf. It's just kind of that evolution of change.
Yeah.
But so would you have You say it, and I feel like I might know the answer here, but I'm curious. So you say you probably wouldn't have quit drinking for a considerably longer amount of time had the conversation still been, outward. If Margaret was telling you you need to stop, but would you have quit had she not?
I think so because
Yeah.
I think that I was having those internal conversations for probably not as long as Margaret.
Yeah.
I wasn't alcohol didn't change my personality.
Yep.
I didn't become belligerent, or I became actually more outgoing, more
Yeah.
extroverted, softer.
I'm so much more fun like this.
Exactly. So there was there was no reason from that point of view. It was more the just that maybe it comes down to control.
Yeah.
For lack of a better way of looking at it, that
Yeah.
I didn't want to be controlled by alcohol,
Yeah.
and I felt like I was,
Yeah.
and
And I
so I
love
would have,
that.
yeah, I would have come to it. I
And I
think.
and I love that. And that's why I asked the question, because I think that there's this uh kind of tricky area where people are like, well, now I have to do it because they've done it. And just to reiterate what you had said, I think if you don't come to that place in your own journey where it is an individual experience and it's not about doing it for somebody else, and it's the age old cliche, you can only help yourself.
Yeah,
And you can certainly enlist supports, and I'm sure that it was potentially made slightly easier of a
yeah,
process because you didn't have somebody who was like, but come on, let's just have a glass of wine with me, you
yeah.
know. So
But I think it's important also to emphasize that you don't need your partner to stop for you to stop.
absolutely.
And that is never a message that I would ever want,
No, no, no.
communicated, because there is such, we did a pop up at Stack Market in Toronto
Yep.
a couple of weeks ago.
Yep.
And for the first time, we really met a lot of our customers that we had only known online at that point.
Yep.
And the stories are unbelievable that everybody has. And, there is such, I probably had 10 people talk about in Toronto, the sober community and how supportive it is,
Yeah.
and I wasn't, we live in Burlington. So I wasn't,
Yeah.
I hadn't become aware of that
Yeah.
so much, but to hear that from people, who could be alone in their journey
Mhm.
was so reassuring that,
Yep.
and just generally people who are looking for non-alcoholic options are way more excited about these opportunities and things, these options, than
Yeah.
people who drink.
Absolutely.
That's true.
Absolutely. And I don't disagree. I mean, my journey has been long enough that I missed all of that. First off, my story wasn't that I engaged in community to stop drinking. My story was very much I was so sick with my mental health that it became a life or death choice. I either continue to do this and I never get better from this concurrent issue that I am not managing at all,
Yeah,
or I continue down this road and I am unequivocally going to not survive this because I can't continue to use something as a coping strategy that has a direct influence on the thing that I'm trying to cope with. And it's a negative influence 100% of the time.
right,
So for me,
right.
there was no choice. It wasn't, my journey was not meetings or support groups or it was very much like, okay, I don't want to die. I don't want to
Yeah,
die. I want to get better. I need my life to be something more. And, and I quit. And I was very successful in just quitting, partially because of my anxiety. Ironically, I was so scared of it at that
yeah,
point that I was like, okay, I can't go back to that. Like, that's a horrible idea. So it was,
yeah.
the one place in my life where anxiety might have served me so well.
True.
Um, but watching kind of this process evolve over time of introducing, and like you said, there were not options. I mean, like everybody was like, oh, there's this .5 beer now at the grocery store, and you go and you drink it and you're like, I mean, come on. Like, no, no, no.
Yeah.
This
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
not point 0.5 beer. This is like somebody rinsed out the thing that they made beer in last, and there is a slight off flavor of that incorporated in this bubbly water that I'm drinking. Um, and so I went through that. But I think that there's this whole side of sobriety too that a lot of people are starting to learn more about now that I really love. And it's not necessarily the problematic behavior, but there's also this preventative kind of movement now where people are just accepting that they don't necessarily want to change their social life. They don't necessarily want to change the environment or their existence, and you do have to.
Hmm.
I think when you are in a place where you choose sobriety, it influences your social life and your ability to exist within your social life immensely. And I think now that we're seeing this whole other population of people who are not necessarily in a place of crisis with their drinking or, having it be that extreme, but are consciously choosing differently. They're consciously choosing, but exactly that. How do you maintain that social life when you take alcohol out of the equation? Because I think it made people, I think it still does in some environments, it makes people more uncomfortable that I'm not drinking than me. I mean,
Yeah.
I
Oh,
can,
totally.
like, I can
Totally.
go, I can go to a bar and drink water all night long. And I mean, I don't know why you wouldn't be happy to have me with you. I can drive you home at the
Mhm.
end of the night.
Yeah.
But it got to a point where, I mean, people just started excluding me. People don't call me up
Mhm.
and invite me out. People don't involve me. And that became
Well,
so common.
you left the club.
I ostracized myself in a way that
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
didn't even know was possible.
I think we had a similar experience
Yeah.
to you, Kendra. And I think our vision is that the non-alcoholic products will be so embedded into selections that you don't
Mhm.
stand out at a party. Like, I don't
Yeah.
notice anymore that somebody, oh, look at, they must be vegan. They're
Yeah.
eating this.
Right?
I don't pay attention to that.
Yeah.
It's part of our culture now. And I
Yeah.
hope that yes, you have to distinguish, just like you need to distinguish, this is gluten free, this is dairy free. You can eat this. We do that for allergies or for food preferences.
Yep.
We need to do the same with the alcohol. We need to, yes, distinguish it at a gathering, whether one side of the table has the sparkling non-alcoholic and the other has the sparkling Prosecco. We
Yep.
need to have that, but it needs to be blended in such a way that you have the same glass as the drinker. You're drinking something similar for the toast. You have a
Yeah.
choice between red and wine, a red or white wine for dinner, should you choose. But it's all sort of blended in, just like
Yeah.
all the other food is.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like, you're not sitting there with a juice box and a glass of Perrier and, like, being like,
A raisin
"Guys, like, this'll be great." And it's funny, I mean, that you mentioned that, and it's so true because, I mean, my wife, she was a bartender and an industry bartender, not just like wasn't just, at a bar at a chain restaurant. She was in the industry. She worked TIFF. She worked at the Drake. She worked. So, I mean, she was in the industry. She was in a place while the cocktail industry was coming up, and she needed to get sober for her own health, for her mental health, and made that decision to do so. And, imagine that. Imagine your entire life being bartending in a world where alcohol isn't just about drinking. It's a way of life. It's a way of
Mhm.
expression. It's a way of creativity. The cocktail movement and everything that went into kind of exposing people to that and the complexities of it. Um, and she stops drinking, and now it's like, okay, like I can't continue with my job. I can't be in that environment. And now my whole world that existed from like 1 in the morning till 6 in the morning isn't something that makes good sense to me anymore. And do those people who live for that industry choose to call you up for brunch, the next day? Probably not, because they're trying out the last, mixology exposure that they just had. And
Right.
it's funny though, because so I sat down here, and I mean, of course. So I love your product. I was exposed to your product through a conference first that I was speaking at, and I met you guys, and I remember just being blown away. I think the thing I was most excited about when I saw the like lineup of who was going to be there and what was going on, I was like, there's a non-alcoholic sampling going on. And this is unheard of for me. And I've been speaking for a long time. And you go to these conferences and nobody's trying to impress anybody with the lineup of non-alcoholic beverages. It's just
Yeah.
never been a thing. But I happen to know myself and other notable presenters and people that were at that conference, this is very much a life choice for us. And so we were all excited. And I got
Mhm.
there and I'm like, okay, so like what's new? How different can this really be? Because I've never sought it out. I'm not somebody who did know to research non-alcoholic options. I've hit some of the more premium near beers on occasion, but only because I was in Europe or only because I was places that's what they served. Um, and I sampled your stuff, and I remember going home and telling, Christy about it and being like, okay, like you got to check this out. This blew me away because there were options. And so then today, of course, because why wouldn't I be on point? So the fact that like you guys have Collins, like I was just like, maybe one of the drinks I missed the most in my sobriety. But I'm
Oh,
sitting there and I'm like, okay, so how do I do? She's like, no, Kendra, you can't just like put a Collins in like a short glass. And she's like, you got to put it in a tall glass and fill it with ice and pour it. And I laughed because I'm like, first off, it wouldn't have occurred to me. It's been too many years. I can't remember how they used to serve these to me. But then
Right.
it was exactly what you guys are talking about. It's the presentation, it's the involvement, it's the feeling like you are a part of it. It's an inclusion that
Yeah.
nobody has considered before. And so is it your own experience that led you to understand this differently, or is it people coming to you and just being like mind blown and being like, okay, can you do this? Can you do this? What can you do next?
Well, I think a lot of it is that the non drinker has been ignored,
Yeah.
for such a long time, and you know restaurants still don't get it. By the way, I mean we
Oh, I
are selling
understand.
to some restaurants, and cocktails. Are you can find non-alcoholic cocktails more now than you ever could, which
Yeah.
is a good thing. Um,
But
but
sorry, and to interrupt for 1 second, you can find the mocktails, but the mocktails are really just their best cocktail minus the alcohol. It's
exactly,
not as though the cocktail actually resembles a beverage that would be an option if
mhm.
yeah,
somebody considered that.
exactly. It's
Yeah.
almost like um, a mocktail is a poor substitute for a cocktail, and it's almost poured with a little. You almost feel like you're getting a side of resentment with
Yeah,
it.
yeah, and you are because you're making them do the same amount of work, but somehow their time is valued less because it's not getting me drunk.
Right,
Yeah.
right,
And
and
it isn't the same price, then you
No,
won't tip the
no.
same on it.
Well, I
yeah.
mean, I don't know. I think some of these places too, you're finding that it's like they'll charge you more.
Well, they
Like
certainly
Well,
can for our
well,
products.
we
100%.
would argue if you use one of our non-alcoholic spirits like Monday or HB Juniper, that
Yep.
if you're creating the cocktail with the same care and the same ingredients and the same time, and you've spent the money to purchase a non-alcoholic spirit,
Yep.
yes, you should charge the same. And
Absolutely.
I don't think anybody argue that fact
I'll pay it.
who's finally has options
Yeah, I'll
at
pay
that
it.
restaurant. Yeah,
I'll pay more. I will pay more. I will pay more to sit there and be able to enjoy the same experience as everybody else at the table and enjoy the beverage I have, feel as though I'm being treated. And absolutely, without a doubt.
yeah. We talked to a couple who both quit, and they used to go out for dinner once a week. We spent. They said they spent $200 every Friday night. And now, since there's no options, there's no red wine, no non-alcoholic red wine on a
Yeah.
menu. This the guy wanted to have that option. He said,
Yeah.
we don't go out anymore. We
Yeah.
stay at home.
Yeah.
We try to find options online for us to drink.
Yeah.
And there's simply, so restaurants really, they're so alcohol centric
Yeah.
still
Yeah.
that, if they don't realize that their customer is not the one person that they in their mind think is sober, comes
Yeah.
in once a week.
Yeah.
It's everybody who's buying a soft drink.
Yeah.
Like be
Absolutely.
having a business lunch with a customer and choosing not to drink alcohol because it's unprofessional. Like
Yeah.
that could be your
Yeah.
company's belief.
Yeah.
But if you were given an option of a non-alcoholic sparkling wine to have with your meal or something else, that would be a great way to. So the restaurant is kind of missing the boat a little bit.
Yeah.
That it's your customer base is a bit bigger than you think it is.
And a lot different now, I think. I think there is an absolute awareness that is coming out, and I think with the generations coming up, the exposure to uh, addictions and abuse and wanting to move away from that, it's one, it's present, it's there, but two, it's so difficult, it's so challenging, and I think that I think I want to say that we're getting better. I feel like I find myself saying this with almost every single thing I talk about in my life. I want to say we're getting better because there's
Right.
this like, and I have to say we're getting better because you guys exist. So we're getting better. I mean, it's just a matter now of educating the, you know, masses of people who don't understand life without alcohol.
Yeah. Yeah,
And
for sure.
the number of times that I'm faced with that, the number of times that, in my journey, and because I've been open about the fact that I'm sober, and because unequivocally, people can't avoid me forever. So you're going to come in contact with me, and I'm not going to make excuses for it. I mean, and that's, I think, the other part that breaks my heart. It kills me. You're talking about the image of being able to go to a party and not have to be like come prepared with your story as to why you're going to justify that you're not drinking. And
Right.
I remember a great friend of mine and somebody I played hockey with, and when she got pregnant, and she wasn't ready for people to know she was pregnant. And it would have been so obvious that she was pregnant if she didn't have a beer in her hand. And I remember we had won a tournament, and I'm like conspicuously just kind of like sneaking to the bathroom, filling her bottle up with water and coming back and putting it back in her hand. And I mean, how do we get away from that? How do we?
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
we did see something really encouraging on the weekend. One of our daughters, Emily, gifted to a friend of hers who was hosting a Christmas party. So
Yeah.
they're both 31.
Yeah.
And her friend said to her, "I have a number of guests coming who are sober." So Emily
Amazing.
took over samples of things, and I wish I could share it. It is on our ClearSips story. One of the guests said, "Oh my God, thank you.
Yeah.
Finally." And he was drinking, I think he was drinking HP, ready to drink gin and tonic or something. He said,
Yeah.
"I finally don't feel awkward at a party."
Yeah.
He said, when people aren't asking me why I'm not drinking, and if I told them the truth, it's such a buzzkill.
I know. Right?
He
And that's
had
the
a very
thing.
funny, but Emily got DMs all Sunday from
Amazing.
people at this party, and these are early 30s
Yeah.
people that embraced it
Yeah.
and were thankful.
And I think that that's such a huge message. And I think it's so important to get that out because I think that that crosses so many lines as well. I mean, it's no different than, with mental health or alcoholism, addictions. You know, people don't want to have to be prepared to have those discussions. People don't want to have to. And it's not that they're embarrassed by it. It's not that they aren't willing to. And in some cases it is, and that's also fine because nobody is expected to share that. But
Yeah.
it's such a relief to be able to go into these environments and not have to come loaded, not have to
Yeah.
come with like this entire like contrived story
Right.
and plan to get through it. And I think that more and more, the more we normalize this and the more this becomes acceptable and the more this becomes accessible, the more you'll see that. I think that will become the new narrative. And the new narrative will be I've been looking forever for ways to exist peacefully with my choices and my circumstances.
Right. Exactly. Well, nobody asks you why you don't smoke.
No, no.
Like it's totally
Or
ridiculous.
why you're putting sunscreen on.
Right? Well,
Yeah.
I don't know. There's still some people who
Oh,
grab
yeah,
out
yeah.
some people who still grab out that like number 4
Baby oil.
and like
but it if you only need to look at the Canadian health guidelines that were released in August, and they're pretty clear, in fact, and quite a departure from the last time they did it, which was I think 2011.
Two
Mhm.
drinks a day for men, something like that. And the old ones, the old
Yeah.
guideline, one drink a day, I think, for women. Now it's two drinks, anything over two drinks a week for anybody.
Mhm.
You're at a moderate to higher risk for 7 different kinds of cancer.
And heart and stroke.
Yep.
Yeah.
And they bottom line it. I mean, there's a very extensive PDF on the guidelines
Yep.
that was written by CAMH, and they basically say we cannot determine a safe amount of alcohol to drink.
Absolutely.
Now, you don't want to be going to the party with that message.
With that PDF
With
in
the
hand.
PDF. Excuse
Yeah.
me, we're going to have to sit through this PowerPoint before we get started.
As tempted as I am, do have some social
Yeah.
skills. But
See, I don't know. I had far more social skills when I drank, but that's besides the point because at this point, I would fully rather accept the awkward and socially anxious person that I am than deal with the repercussions of everything that
Yeah,
alcohol
for
was
sure.
inevitably had on me.
Right.
But I
Well,
like it.
Oddbird, one of our producers who makes a great, I think one of the world leaders in sparkling, non-alcoholic sparkling
100%.
wine.
I
Yeah.
had it.
I
Amazing.
mean, their tagline is, would you like your wine with or without alcohol? And if
I
we
love
could
it.
get to that point
Yeah.
where, like Margaret said, you're at a party, half the table's alcohol, half the table's non-alcohol. You fill your glass, you go, you have fun with your friends, and it never came up. Wouldn't that just be
or like the coffee
so ideal?
pot that's caffeinated, or it has the orange rim on it
Yeah.
and it's decaf.
Yeah.
Right.
Right. Who cares?
That's what we're trying. That's what we're trying to get
Yeah.
to.
And,
It's
and
really,
again, there's never that argument of like, come on, like buck up.
right.
You should put the caffeine in you. I think you should be crawling out of your skin for the rest of the day. And why would you want to sleep at night? Like, and I say this
Exactly.
as somebody who very unintelligently decided to finish a coffee last night at 6 p.m.
Oh
Horrible.
dear.
Oh,
Horrible. I was up till 1 o'clock this morning. I don't think I've seen 1 o'clock in the morning until, well, I shouldn't say that. My kids are young, but it's, I love everything about it. And I mean, it's, I kind of started stalking you guys. Like, let's be honest about this. I mean, I saw you guys at the conference and then I came home and I talked about it. And my birthday was, I want to say, a couple of weeks after that conference, and I had mentioned it, and I got the mixer pack for my birthday. This was because I had spoken so highly about the one drink I had had. Like, I was so disappointed. I left the conference and I'm like, I should have just like loaded up so that you could taste this all, Christy, so that I didn't have to sit here and be like, we're never gonna be okay again going into Sobeys and being like, this, no, like I don't want this, I want that. um but it's such a difference. And I remember, like, I that was the main part of my birthday gift was a mixer pack from Clear Sips, and
Yeah.
it was phenomenal. And it was so many options that had not been available to me for so long, and
Well,
for
that's what
so
we at
long.
the stack market. At the stack market, we talk to so many people. There's just you see their journey. They go to the grocery store.
Hmm.
A lot of them tried what was available there, and
Beer, wine.
fortunately they continued their search because
Yeah.
I'm just afraid there's people out there that think that's the only option and they stop
I
looking.
feel like a lot do. I
Yeah,
did. I did.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah,
for me, my exposure is, then you would go to the grocery store now, and I think now you can get like, there's a couple of companies out there who have like non-alcoholic margaritas, and in reality, you're drinking like bar lime with salt. Like, you're not
yeah,
actually, there's not actually necessarily a component of it that actually tastes like you're drinking a margarita, and it's the equivalent of what you're going to get from the pissed off bartender when you order a non-alcoholic
right,
margarita and they're like, why are you drinking this? It's like syrup. You're drinking a glass
yeah,
of syrup right now.
for sure. But even that's better than nothing.
Nothing.
It's even
100%.
that's better to take. If you're not drinking, it's better to take that to a party and not be questioned about your sobriety.
Absolutely.
Than not having that option for sure.
Absolutely. But
So
imagine flipping the table and being like, here, your option is you either have to drink the worst bottle of beer you have
Right.
ever tasted in your life, or you better come up with a good story for why you're not willing to drink that,
Yeah.
because that's it. That's it. You're selling yourself short. So I had this mixer pack and it was great because for the next, couple of weeks we would share each of them so we could try them all, and I was just kind of blown away by it. And I reached out to you guys. Well, actually, no, that expanded a bit. So then you guys met a friend of mine, Jen McNeely. Um,
Right.
Right.
so Jen McNeely from She Does the City is actually somebody I went to high school with, and so I had Jen as a guest on my podcast. I think maybe a couple of weeks before this, and we had spoken, and I think Clear Sips came up as well because you guys were about to speak with her for She Does the City. And I was like,
Correct.
I can't wait for you to experience this. Like, Jen, you're going to be blown away. Because there are, there, with all due respect, there are a population of people who have had struggles with alcohol that aren't necessarily in a place where non-alcoholic versions of alcohol are a good choice, and that's fine.
That's so
That's
true. Yeah.
absolutely fine,
Yeah.
and it makes sense, and that is something that you should know of yourself. It's if this isn't an option for you, if this is just a step in a bad direction for you, then, I appreciate that. This isn't me sitting here saying everybody needs to be able to drink non-alcoholic versions of alcohol. Um, but the conversation Jen and I had was very much the piece that is, but you can have an option. You can have an option where it's, I'm going to have an actually really enjoyable glass of wine with my meal, not just I'm going to drink something that is primarily like white grape juice, I think is the like main ingredient in
Right.
every non-alcoholic wine they tried to make for a while. Um, I'm actually going to have a nice glass of wine with dinner tonight. And it's just so complimentary, and it changes the experience, and it changes the environment, and it changes the feel of it. And it's not just like, yeah, like I just made a really nice steak and a really wonderful dinner, and if you got a Sprite, like
Yeah.
it's just
Put your
it
can on the
changes,
table.
Yeah. Well,
right?
like, yeah. I mean, for us, or I guess for me, because there's been so many decades with wine. I seriously enjoy the whole ritual of
Yeah,
opening a bottle of wine, putting it in a nice glass, sharing it with Margaret, having it with a meal. And I
absolutely.
really miss that
Yep,
part of,
yep,
of that whole experience that alcohol, I guess, used to bring. But there are all sorts of, when you think about it, you can enjoy probably 95% of what you did when you drank without swallowing. You're purchasing the wine, you're storing the wine, you're chilling it, you're making a decision, what would go with this food. You're doing all the same kinds of things. You're
yep,
opening it, you might let it breathe for a bit, you're putting it in your glass, and you're just not it's just not you're just not swallowing alcohol.
yep.
But all the rest of it is still there to be enjoyed.
So
And
the alternative to clear sips is to just put like a spit bowl next to everybody at the dinner table. That'd be
yeah,
great, eh?
well,
Like,
exactly.
here, I don't actually have anything good to offer you to drink right now, but if you want a glass of this, you could just spit,
Just
okay,
spit out the
please.
Yeah,
alcohol.
exactly.
That's funny.
Well,
But I mean,
I feel a new
this,
ad campaign coming on there. I don't.
you know, for sure.
You're
But
welcome. You're welcome.
this is part of the whole kind of inclusive host theme that is so prevalent on our site, because we
Yeah.
really feel strongly about that. Whether you're a restaurant, whether you're having a Christmas party, or to think, when you provide an option for somebody who doesn't drink,
Yeah.
that person, the relief that person must feel, being with a group, which is
Absolutely.
intimidating, as we've
Yeah.
talked about. It's intimidating
Yeah.
already to
Yeah.
be going to a party when you don't drink.
Yeah.
But to see that host has thought of you,
Yeah.
I mean, that's
To feel
powerful.
seen. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so every single thing of what you just said, every single word in that sentence, in that description, is why, you know, uh, I'm ecstatic, and I hope you don't mind me doing this because we didn't talk about me doing this right now, but we're doing this. So I'm ecstatic to be partnering with you guys. I am. I can't think of a better relationship to be able to share with the guests on my podcast. And I mean, Clear Sips has become our sponsor on the Speakeasy podcast, and I'm so excited. I'm so excited to be able to share this and to offer that inclusion to my guests, because so often, even just sitting and having a conversation with somebody, um, there's nobody who comes to these conversations without a drink in their hand. And whether it's water, whether it's tea, whether it's coffee, whether it's a
Yeah.
drink, I was on a podcast recently where I sat down and both of the hosts were enjoying a glass of wine, and they were like, "Would you like a glass of wine?" And I was like, I would, but that's really going to change the feel of this podcast. It's like,
There we
I'm
go.
pretty sure at this point, if I sniff the cork, we're going to have a really interesting show.
Yeah.
Um, but the follow up was then, oh, geez, like we have a bottle of water. I think maybe there's a ginger ale in the fridge
Yeah.
from my
It's always the
lunch.
last thought.
And
It's always the last thought.
and fine. I mean, I'm far enough along in my journey, and I have been experiencing this for long enough that I can make excuses for people. I have zero expectation of people
Mhm.
to have considered the fact that I'm not going to be thrilled when you offer me a glass of wine. I will even make a joke about it so that you don't have to feel uncomfortable about the fact
Yeah.
that you just
Yeah.
offered me a glass of wine. But I'm so excited. I'm so excited for this relationship moving forward. I'm so excited because, and I mean, you know this about me now, and everybody knows this about me by now, is, I'm always considering wellness and mental health on everything I do. And I think that the power of connection and inclusion and kindness and really showing up for each other right now is so important. I think that we're coming into a holiday season where a lot of people feel isolated, a lot of people feel
Mhm.
excluded, and this is just another simple kindness that we can offer one another to break down some of those barriers, to pull somebody into a room and have them feel a little less alone. And I think it's so powerful. Like, I have goosebumps, and I
Yeah.
Well, Kendra, you should know when we first met you in September at that conference, and the one that you referenced where you found out that we were
Revolution
sampling
Her,
non-alcohol. Yeah,
Yeah.
fantastic conference. We can
yeah.
totally give them a plug
And
here.
David, Emily, or David, Mary, and I were working that
Yeah.
Clear Sips table. When you came over, your energy was palpable and so authentic. And you talked to us, and you were so enthusiastic. And when you left, the three of us were like, "Wow, like she is like magical." Like
I
Yeah.
there's
feel
just
like I started selling your products for you. I was
well,
sitting there
you
at the
were
table. I'm like, you need to try this. Like, I was
yeah.
just like, can I please have one more?
But
Well,
your interest in it and your authenticity about mental health and sobriety and all of it just came so through to
yeah.
us. So
Yeah,
we couldn't
I
be
appreciate
happier
that.
about the partnership.
Yeah.
I'm
And when
so
it came
excited,
in
right?
our direction a few weeks ago, we were like, "Are you kidding me?"
Yeah.
So we feel like it's the perfect match. We
It
Yeah.
really
is.
do.
It is. Like, I can't, there's just so many levels of it. And maybe it just sounds so simple to a lot of people, but as somebody who's walked into that room, and as somebody who struggles to walk into any room, I mean, I know that it's hard to believe. I get that I put out, a feeling of comfort where I am, because I've learned that, and I've learned how to do that. And I've learned how to support myself in a way that I can make a safe space anywhere I go. But at the same time, there is an underlying constant attention and energy that I have to give to make that possible for myself. And this
Mhm.
just feels like such an easy and simple gesture of kindness and inclusion that I'm just blown away by it, because the opportunity, I mean, I wish that this had happened a few weeks ago. I wish I could have, sent Jen a bottle of wine so that when I was sitting there having a conversation with her, I could have, enjoyed that with her as well and connected on that with her as well. And that's something that alcohol offers that I am jealous of. And that is
Yeah.
not the actual alcohol. It's not the feeling or what I'm left with or the effect that alcohol has on me. It's the connection. It's the
Yeah.
same
Camaraderie.
possibility. Yeah, it's the same possibility as having a good meal or having,
Mhm.
foods that you can sit and share and just be present with one another. And that's something that alcohol does provide. And to have the opportunity again to now be able to offer that to people, like, I'm thrilled. I'm so like, you guys
Yeah.
sent me product and you don't understand. Like, I am so excited for Christmas because I have these boxes to be like, "You've gotta try this." My father, big scotch and whiskey drinker, loves it. Some health issues have changed his direction, and he's no longer able to enjoy that. Do you know how excited I am that I have a bottle of whiskey here for him to be
Aw.
Yeah.
like, I get to pour my dad a whiskey at Christmas and throw
Oh,
some ice in that, and he gets to sit there with that and feel the normalcy that was his entire life before what he's dealing with, and if even that moment gives him a smile, a moment of just, "Wow." I can't imagine a better gift to be able to offer him right now. Like,
mhm.
Yeah.
I'm gonna tear up. I'm gonna tear up
Yeah.
about this. This is
We
I'm
love
s
hearing these
Yeah.
I'm
stories.
gonna
We
drink my
really
Collins now.
do. No, because there's a lot to the business, as you know, behind scenes that isn't all moving stories or feeling like we're impacting because businesses are complicated and we keep
Absolutely.
our eye on the ball by hearing
Absolutely.
the stories. And that is our vision
Yeah.
that
And
we
that's
get.
why I love you guys, and that's why when I thought to myself, I'm like, "Okay, there's something here." I remember reaching out and I'm like, "I don't know what the answer is." Like, "What do you envision here?" I was like, "I don't know, but I have to be part of something. Something has to exist here. This just makes too much sense." Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
you meet people, I feel like you have to collect people in life, and when you have an opportunity to collect good people, and you have an opportunity to collect people who get it, who understand that what they are offering in the world isn't as simple as, "Hey, you don't have to drink a Coke anymore, you can have this instead."
Yeah.
When there's more to that, I couldn't let it go.
Well, I
Well,
think to your story, when we at Stack Market, every single person we talked to, even if a lot of them were coming in to find things for themselves, every single person knew at least one other person in their family, in their friend group, that struggles or
Yeah,
is in sobriety.
yeah.
And it was so neat to see people thinking about other
mhm.
people,
Yeah.
you
I
know,
love it. Like,
yeah, that's,
there's so many levels, and we could honestly, if we just sat here and kept talking, there's 50 more stories that are gonna come to me in the next 5 minutes where
yeah,
it's just, like, mind-blowing where it connects. But, I'm so excited for this journey with you guys. I'm so excited to have met you and that you didn't just, like, I'm really happy that I wore the bright jacket that stood out at Revolutionary so that you guys couldn't forget me. I'm like,
well,
"That's it." Like,
you need to know when you left the table, it was
Mm.
later on that afternoon. I said to Mary, I said, you remember meeting that woman with the blonde hair? And I said, she has got an amazing aura.
oh, I
You
love
know,
that.
and that was just,
It's true.
before we'd even talked again or anything else, we just both observed that aura around you, which is great. I mean,
I
really
love
good.
it.
Meant to be, Kendra.
It is, and I can't wait to see where this goes, and
Us too.
I am, 100% behind what everything you guys are doing. I love it. I can't wait to share it with others. I can't wait to experience it with others. I can't wait to connect with others and be able to offer that. Um, I can't wait to see you guys again. We need to do that soon. And I just thank you from the bottom of my heart for what you guys
Mm.
are doing, for turning your journey into something that actually impacts others in a way that people so desperately need right now. And if you ever need that reminder, if you ever have one of those days where you're like, why is nobody getting this? Or you just call me up because I'm like,
We will. We'll
this
take you
is
up on that.
if you need that recharge, I'm here. I am your girl.
Well, thank
That-
you so much,
yeah,
first of all, with inviting us to this whole opportunity
yeah,
and for being here today. It's just been wonderful talking to you.
yeah.
Excellent. Thank you so much. I will talk to you guys soon. Happy holidays. Thank you so much for my gift boxes. I'm so excited. And I assure you, you'll see it all over social media as I'm like bragging about the options that I have available. Like, I feel like I have to throw a party now. I'm just going to have to throw a party. That's just the
Yeah.
way it's going to be. So thank you
Aw,
so much. I will talk to you guys soon. Take care.
Okay.
take
Thank
care.
you.